who had voted for Obama and didn't vote this time, or voted for nobody specifically for president. What I mean, is there a way to sort of glean and say like, oh, well, this is indicative of the fact that maybe there was not enough attention paid to sort of trigger that sense of you have an obligation to go vote?
Yeah. So, the primary contest is an interesting one. And I will say our book focuses heavily on the general election. So potentially what you could have is a motivation problem, right? So not that people didn't understand the norm, but they may not have felt motivated to participate in the electoral process. And in a primary contest, right, there's typically strong partisans. So a large majority that we saw of in major states where Joe Biden was able to gain the leverage that I think led him into his presumptive nominee position right now, where we saw high levels of Black participation within the primaries. But I agree with you that there are some African Americans who do.
Well, I'm talking about abstention,
right?
I'm specifically talking. I'm sorry. I'm specifically talking about the Clinton election, the Clinton-Trump election.
Oh, in the Clinton-Trump election. Okay, yes. So that's, again, I think it's a motivation, a situation there, right? Like not an understanding necessarily of the norm, but a turnout. Now, I will say, though, in the Trump-Clinton election, one of the things to think about there is the comparison, right? So Obama is the full-on kind of realization of what this norm is supposed to do, right? Like if the goal is to have say and influence in politics, then one's involvement in this norm, right, is the goal is not only to have policy and decisions being made that are going to be important for African Americans, but it's also gaining power in the office, right? So Obama is like the massive realization of that by having him become the president of the United States. I would never compare the numbers, and I don't think Ishmael would either, of the turnout that we observed of African Americans in 2016 to any of the Obama years. Like that would be weird because he's an exception in terms of what he embodies, right? He is he's the first Black president. Now, if you compare those numbers to 2004, before he runs, African American turnout is basically the same. Like they are statistically indistinguishable. So I think that that's one thing to keep in mind is the uniqueness of the electoral contest with Obama. I don't think Clinton was going to be able to ride in on a wave of that same level of Obama turnout because of what Obama represented. However, I also agree to the point that you're pointing out here, which is that there was potentially a motivation issue amongst some African Americans from reports that I heard from field workers, from different campaigns, as well as people even on the ground in certain communities like Milwaukee, like you mentioned, being one example, arguing that the Clinton campaign didn't do as much investment into on-the-ground grassroots work. And I think that that's a big part of the considerations around the social network aspect of political participation for Blacks when it comes to their Democratic partisanship, because you really do need to energize the networks. You need to energize the communities. You need to energize the social community that is there. And if that wasn't being done in key states because an assumption was made that that support would just be there at the level that we had seen from Obama, you would be mistaken, right? And you would really need to do that work. And from what I heard, at least read, even in the New York Times and other places, was that some people were reporting that they did not see that level of campaign investment coming from the Clintons. There was some discussions of issues related to African Americans, but again, on the ground, not as much effort there potentially. And so if you're going to deal with a mobilization problem, that's when you would see that, right? You wouldn't necessarily see as much turnout. But again, I don't think the numbers were that much lower. In fact, I think they're statistically the same between 2016 and 2004.
I see. And just to be clear, it's not a question in this instance. I mean, from your perspective, that it's about talking about the issues at that point, right? I mean, because presumably, if you go back to that experiment, Barack Obama is still the same Barack Obama, regardless of who is advocating giving him money. And it's the sort of I guess the peer pressure on some level, the social constraints, as you call it, that are the ones that get people to go and actually drop the cash in the bucket.
Yeah, no, that is correct, right? And so if you wanted to, and that's why we begin our book, I think, really thinking about, for instance, an example like Alabama with the Roy Moore and Doug Jones race there, right? Because it was a surprise when people woke up the morning after that race had gone on and found out that Roy Moore had lost, like Doug Jones did not win, and people were trying to figure out how that happened. Well, there was a huge grassroots organizing that was going on the ground there, led heavily by African American women in the state of Alabama, trying to ensure that people turned out to vote. So voting and the participation and the exercising of the norm becomes a social process, and if that is not a focus, right, it doesn't really necessarily it doesn't mean that your policies alone or your positions alone are going to do enough to motivate people out there. Like, you're going to have to get on the ground. You're going to have to get those networks in place, because African Americans are also dealing with extensive challenges when it comes to the franchise, right? Like, the participation we even observe of Blacks is extraordinary in the face of numerous things that get put into place to try to hinder Black participation in the electoral process, right? We just watched that in Wisconsin. Like, we just saw that happen, right? So you really have to think hard about what you're going to do to motivate individuals. And if people aren't being as motivated by potentially the campaign, even if they agree with the policies, what are you doing on the ground to get people to turn out?
And that efforts have to be, I mean, according to your work, it sounds like need to be, at the very least, that person-to-person contact. That contact has to come from African Americans. I mean, it can't be.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, fair enough.
Yes. No, it would need to be person-to-person contact.
It's fascinating work. Cheryl Lard, Steadfast Democrats, How Social Forces Shape Black Political Behavior. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll put a link to that at majority.fm. Thanks again, Cheryl. All right.
Thank you.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break and head into the fun half in a moment. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. By becoming a member, you not only get extra content every day, almost every single day. I mean, we can't do it every single day, but I don't know, half a dozen days out of the year that we don't, if that many. But you're also supporting the show in a time where obviously ad rates are down across the board. I encourage you to, obviously, if you're in a position to support this show, support this program, but support all the shows and the media outlets that you like. I mean, one of the things that I'm trying to do is to sort of expand. I mean, we pay for a lot of the content that, that we use on this show, at least subscribe to a lot of these magazines, but I'm sort of expanding the universe in which I pay for that content. If I read the thing once every 2 months now, I am going and subscribing, just because of, across the board, it's not quite as easy for me to go and, support a local restaurant. But this is one thing that you can do, and to help sort of maintain an infrastructure of media in this country. It's important. We're seeing layoffs in like LA, I mean, everywhere, really. And so, if you have the means, of course, and if you don't, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. And if you've ever sent one in the past, and for whatever reason, I don't know what our leakage is, but probably I miss 5 to 10% of the requests at any given time. Just keep doing it. Understand it is not you. It is me. And sometimes I just miss them. We just get a ton of emails and I just miss them. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that one. And someone starts yelling in my house. And so I go and deal with it. So if you are someone who can't afford a membership, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. If you're someone who can, by all means, great time now to become a member. And we are now accepting through our system via Kyle PayPal as well. So you can go sign up at jointhemajorityreport.com, and there's a myriad of different ways in which you can pay. Not Bitcoin still, but I don't know if anybody trades in that anymore. Also, like I say, support other shows. TMBS will be live again tomorrow night. You can support that over at patreon.com/TMBS or watch it at youtube.com, The Michael Brooks Show. The Nomiki Const Show. Nomiki will be with us tomorrow, but you can find that at patreon.com, The Nomiki Show, or at Nomiki Const on YouTube. And the Antifada, Jamie's going to join us in the fun half. Check that out, patreon.com/the Antifada. Matt, what's happening on the literary hangover side? You guys are talking Bacon's Rebellion while also performing your own rebellion on your Twitch channel. Is that right?
Oh, I don't know about quite that. Well, what we did do is one of the most informationally nutritious Twitch streams people have ever seen. I played A Plague's Tale: Innocence while playing selections in a word-to-text program from Michel Foucault's Discipline and Punish on the Plague Town, and on Daniel Defoe's A Journal from the Plague Year. So check that out. It's very multimedia. People's minds were blown. A few random people happened across the stream that didn't know what they were getting into, but they enjoyed it. So yes, please subscribe to me at twitch.tv/literary hangover.
I can't help but just think that there's some PhD candidate, in, I don't know, University of Kansas, who's just taking a break, and then it's just what? People just sort of freaking out, talking about this weirdo who's playing this stuff while he's playing this. Yeah, what game are you playing? Aren't you supposed to say that? A Plague's Tale: Innocence. I said that up front. Very interesting game. I didn't know if that was the book or the actual game. No, that's the game, and you sort of go through a medieval town, and it's during the plague. Very interesting. There's the white. Very painted... apropos. Yes, it's all very relevant, folks. All very relevant. All right, we're going to take a quick break. 646-257-3920 is the phone number. We will take calls starting now. We will also take your IMs on the app at majorityapp.com. You can sign up. You don't have to sign up for anything. You just get the app. It's free. Majorityapp.com. Also, speaking of Twitch, Jamie's at the Antifada has a Twitch today, so she'll probably tell us about that later. Okay, good. Well, Jamie will hop on the stream and see you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.